Hi, my name is Caitlin Garrity. I'm doing a video based off of this week's discussion too. So after reading the resources, I do have a very significant understanding of the IEP process since I am a special education teacher. I'm an RSP teacher, which is a resource specialist program. Those are services that we provide to children based off of their IEP and their needs, accommodations, and all the modifications that we provide them that are in the IEP, which is a legal binding document. They have to receive those service minutes, they have to receive those accommodations, and everything that's put into place. A 504 is different. A 504 is more broad in its definition of disabilities. For those students, they can be put into the SST program and receive accommodations that are based off of their academic standing or the disability itself. So in the classroom, like any modifications that they give them, it's not legally binding, but it is beneficial to them to be able to access the general education curriculum. So I understand the eligibility process before they come to me. That is based on, so if they have like a learning disability and it's hard for them to read based off of maybe dyslexic tendencies or anything like that, they can receive RTI services, which is response to intervention. So maybe they'll go to that teacher and get a little more assistance with academics. But if the strategies and the modifications or accommodations that they're giving them through our RTI in the general education curriculum aren't really benefiting them, then the SST team can meet, and that is the same, kind of similar to an IEP meeting. However, this isn't legally binding. This is just meeting and kind of going over strategies and accommodations that can benefit the student better. But if the SST team decides that maybe they would benefit more from RSP services, speech services, or anything like that, then they can ask parents if they would be willing to sign over what's called an assessment plan. And that is when our educational psychologists, speech teachers, and then myself test the student and see where they are academically, psychologically, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. We can test for autism, we can test for ADHD to like tendencies, dyslexia, so on and so forth. For myself, there was actually a student that I just recently got on my caseload. She had been in SST for about 2 years. A lot of her tendencies come from ADHD and dyslexic markers. She has a really hard time encoding and decoding words. That means like reading or putting it down for paper. So if she takes the word like the, I know they worked on that a lot last year when I was talking with her RTI teacher and kind of scoping where she was. So like she would take the and go t, but together you're supposed to make the th sound, and it just, regardless of how many times she went over that, it really was difficult for it to click with her. Because she just had that basic phonological awareness, and getting her to understand more irregular words was really, really difficult for her. So finally, parents signed off on an assessment plan, and now she comes to me. She receives services at our 45 minutes because she's a second grader. And those services are now legally binding. The RTI services were not legally binding. She would receive them to help her kind of assist in bridging the gaps, but the strategies and accommodations weren't as consistent as they are when the IEP is legally binding. So then how I can learn more about the IEP and 504 process, that's really just understanding the broader scope as that 504. I know that there's a lot more in the definition because it's such a broader thing, whereas the IEP, that is, you have to qualify under the 13 qualifiers that are within the IEP itself. So that's OHI with the other health impairment, SLD, which is specific learning disability, which is what that child that I was just discussing qualified under. She qualified under OHI due to ADHD-like tendencies. SLD was a very, very close second. It was something that we as a team discussed because of her dyslexic markers. However, because she is in second grade, we said that it would probably fix it, but we always come back and we assess 3 years later. That's for the triennial. And parents are always concerned. They're like, well, what if I do SLT? You know, are the minutes going to be different? Or what about OHI? Are the minutes going to be different? Is she still going to be? Yes, if they qualify under any of the 13, then they're still going to receive the services based off of the IEP itself. The services are not going to change. So when I compare and contrast AI findings, so when a teacher should use an IEP and when should a 504 plan be used to support a hearing impaired student, that is dependent on if they're able to access the general education curriculum. So if they still, with the strategies or the modifications or the accommodations that are provided to them, if they can still access the curriculum and general education, then the 504 is fine. When that is more complicated and they are struggling a lot and the team as a whole sees that, or the SST team sees it, or there's parents see it, or whoever sees it that's on their team with the general education teacher, and they go, hey, maybe we should look into an IEP and an assessment plan for the student to see if we can better serve them, that's when an IEP comes into place. So difficulties that I may experience as a special education teacher in the eligibility process is parents. If the parents are against the assessment plan and they're an SST, moving them over to an IEP, if they say, I don't want the assessment plan, I don't want my child to be assessed, that child stays in SST. That they need to find various other accommodations or modifications that they can give them in the general education setting. Whereas if the parents say, oh, that's fine, like let's do the assessment, let's see if they qualify, that's when they move on to the IEP. So that's kind of where it's difficult, is getting the parents to understand that it's not a bad thing. We're just looking at what eligibilities they can fall under. And last thing is, what would I do if I disagree with an IEP team member's opinion? I lay down as many facts and understand their point of view, trying to come up with a compromise. I actually just had an IEP meeting recently where parents really wanted to place their student back in SDC. And we were very reluctant of that based off of her abilities academically and her ability to speak well. A lot of our students in SDC are nonverbal. And so we came up with a compromise that the student spends this very small amount in the morning in SDC because she's a huge eloper. So she stays in SDC for an hour and 45 minutes. Then she comes to me for 45 minutes, or 30 minutes, sorry, because she's in kinder. And then for the remainder of the day, she goes with her general education public because that's when they do all of their specials. We kind of base that off of her academics. So she would be working on academics in SDC, working on them with me. And then the remainder of the day is mainly specials to help her bridge that gap and get that social interaction that she gets with her peers. But if I was unable to disagree, or I was unable to agree with an IEP member, that's when mediation or due process comes into place, which is a lot of what we go over with parents at the beginning of the meeting, because anybody in the IEP meeting or IEP team members can call a meeting at any time. And if we disagree, then we can always come back. There's notes that are taken to take down what's happening in the IEP meeting. So if there's a disagreement, that is put out in plain text for the legal document. Everything in that meeting has to be documented. So legally, everybody has to be in agreement. But that is the end of my video. I appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate any comments. Thank you.